Joining us now is James Billot, editor at UnHerd. James, thank you for joining us. The relationship between the US and Zelensky, well, it doesn't appear to be getting any better. Overnight, Zelensky claimed that a deal to bring the war to an end is very, very far away, and Donald Trump has hit right back.
President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
Now, this comes just days after the explosive meeting at the Oval Office. James, what do you make of this development? What is Zelensky trying to do here? It almost seems like he's trying to get the US offside.
I really cannot make sense of Zelensky's strategy right now. It's completely senseless to me. I can understand you have a bad meeting on Friday, things don't go well in the heat at the moment. That much makes sense to me, as bad as it might have been for Western relations. But to then dig in like this and make all these comments to Western press saying that the war's going to go on and we might not end it anytime soon, this is exactly the kind of way you're just going to annoy Trump. Because if there's one thing that this president does not respond well to, it's intransigence, it's stubbornness, it's digging your heels in. Because I'll tell you what, no one can outlast a leader like Donald Trump when it comes to this kind of thing. Now, fortunately, Trump did say recently that the minerals deal between Ukraine and the US was still live, but comments like these are really going to exacerbate those tensions, and I don't like to see where it's all going.
Absolutely, and it's such high stakes. Now, we know that Europe is stepping up. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced a 4-point plan to work with Ukraine to end the war and defend Ukraine from Russia. Now, Starmer provided a $2 billion loan for military aid. He's revealed that he's willing to partner with European support to establish a coalition of the willing to defend Ukraine, but claims that the UK is prepared to put boots on the ground and planes in the air. So this is a completely different strategy. And so how is this really going to achieve peace when we're talking about deploying troops?
Well, I think Starmer, like a lot of European leaders, is adopting this hold me back posture. I think deep down he knows that Europe can't really go it alone, and he's basically counting on the support of the US to do this. But he knows the US won't go in there with him, so he's able to say what he wants with no real downside to it. I'm not particularly sure that Starmer knows exactly what he's doing here, because the truth is that the UK military, much like the EU's, is completely hollowed out. There's something like 5, 10, maybe 20,000 available troops for full combat deployment. And then add to that, there's a recruitment crisis going on. And I'm not even sure how many planes it can put in the air, even if it did want to. So again, I wouldn't be too optimistic or bullish about prospects if it does want to go that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that's far easier said than done. Now, I'm sure many Americans are pleased to see Europe stepping up to defend its own continent, but Trump is essentially calling Europe out for the money it's been sending to Russia throughout the war for buying energy. Now, despite a range of sanctions against Russia, EU imports of Russian energy in particular remain largely unchanged. In fact, imports of Russian fossil fuels last year was more than the $18 billion of financial aid that was sent to Ukraine. So several years ago, Donald Trump warned Germany and other NATO nations for paying for Russian energy, yet asking for America to defend them against Russia. Here's this clip.
It's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas. Ultimately, Germany will have almost 70% of their country controlled by Russia with natural gas. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened.
Many people laughed at Donald Trump for saying this at the time, but James, this is really a factor in all this, that the EU is spending billions on Russian energy.
And that wasn't the only time that German diplomats laughed at Trump. He made a similar warning in 2018 at the UN, and he said that you're all buying Russian gas. Why on earth are you doing this? And they just sat there and laughed at him. And it was really characteristic of that sneery tone that German liberals and European liberals took towards Trump in his first term, even though he was exactly right. And guess what? Fast forward 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's Germany that's now paying the price for it. Its economy is in the tank because its economic model was entirely predicated on buying cheap gas from Russia and importing materials from China, both of which it can no longer do. And that's why we're seeing this right-wing resurgence happening in the country that happened 10 days ago in the election as a kind of rebuttal to what was going on with that German establishment. So I have to say, Germany has been really proven wrong here, and Trump, he has to leave this conversation feeling quite vindicated.
James, I want to talk to you about what else is going on in the US, and apparently Republicans should watch out because guess who's coming back? This time he's going after the top job, the failed vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz. Yes, he's considering running for president in 2028. The 60-year-old Minnesota governor didn't rule out the idea of running when he was pressed by The New Yorker. He said, if I think I could offer something, I would certainly consider that. He said if the circumstances are right and he has the right skill set for the moment, he'll then do it. James, what are his chances here? Will Americans accept that this is the guy who repeatedly suggested that Donald Trump was a Nazi? He's, of course, known for putting tampons in boys' bathrooms, for making his state a place for minors to visit so they could get sex changes. And, of course, he lied repeatedly about his military record. Does Tim Walz, does he have a chance? Is he really the Democrats' best shot?
I think Tim Walz is the best possible candidate to have in 2028 if you are a Republican, because they will win in an absolute landslide. I cannot even believe that this man is in the conversation for 2028. And it's a really damning indictment on the party when we are having to recycle these 2024 has-beens and somehow put them forward as if they're this fresh new candidate who are going to be able to take on whoever replaces Trump in that election. I think it's appalling. And let's not forget how Tim Walz got in this position in the first place. He had a very good news cycle shortly after that terrible debate by Joe Biden, where he basically called the Vance and Trump team weird. He got 2 weeks of good news coverage for that. And then Kamala Harris, in her infinite wisdom, thought, this is my guy, this is my candidate, he has to be my VP. She chose him, and I think she realized pretty quickly how badly a job he was doing, and that's why he was phased out towards the end of that campaign. But again, I just cannot believe that we are having to have this conversation in 2025 when there's not a huge range of candidates at the moment, but there's got to be someone better than this guy.
Most underwhelming candidate. He even made Kamala Harris look good. Not quite, but, you know, I think people could agree that he wasn't as good as her, which says a lot. But, hey, I don't think he's really got the message if he's claiming he might have a run at president in 2028. James Billot, editor at UnHerd, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Gabby.